time it is. It's time for the top 10 at 10. So I am that nurse practitioner named Nikeda Brown who comes to you at 10 p.m. to give you ways to live not only days and weeks, but months and years longer into your expected level of health. All right, so I am actually in another space tonight doing this broadcast, so super excited to stay in the realm of consistency and come to you because we have an exciting topic tonight. This is Men's Health Awareness Month. We're taking this week out to talk about things as it relates to men's health, and so I had a particularly interesting topic, prostate cancer, that I wanted to talk about tonight. So let's get on in and say hello as you come into the broadcast so that I'll be able to just see who you are as you tune on in. And if you're watching this on replay, make sure you like and say hello during the replay. So actually I need to grab my computer because I have my phone so far away that I can't actually see who is tuning in, but I think it's Carlos. Hey Carlos, thanks for tuning in. We're talking about men's health tonight. So if you could, this will be the time you should hang on in there and listen to the topic because we're going to talk about prostate stuff tonight. So let me get tuned in here so that I can see the comments. As I'm doing this, in true fashion, we're going to say the mission. So remember, the mission of Zing Life is to improve the quality of life within the community. Basic life skills, health promotion, and wellness and self-esteem development are the hallmarks of the organization's programs and projects, and we focus on decreasing inequalities and disparities as it relates to health. And yes, that is Carlos. So thank you for tuning in, and for all of those who are tuned in, thank you as well. So we're talking about men's health. So you're supposed to, ladies, you're supposed to grab your men and bring them into the broadcast with you tonight. I see there is one man front and center. Thank you, Carlos, for popping in front and center. Let's have this discussion about prostate tonight. So number one is the welcome. Number two is the mission. Number three is actually prostate. So I have some little people who are moving around into the broadcast. So if you see those little heads, just disregard them. You're supposed to be not coming into the broadcast. You want to say hello? Okay, just say hello because we got to get into this topic. So, all right, so women do not have a prostate. Let's put that out there front and center. Women do not have a prostate. And so we are talking about prostates because we want the men to know what things you have that women don't have, how you can make sure that you keep your prostate functional, that you keep it healthy, because that's the thing that drives your life. So that prostate is a little gland. It's about the size of a walnut, man. So it's about the size of a walnut, and it is responsible for making part of that fluid that creates your semen. So you can live without a prostate. I know you've heard that. You can live without a prostate. It does not have to be there, but it is one of those sexual reproductive glands. And so hence the topic of, do you want a saved life or do you want an injured sex life? Because some people say if they have problems with their prostate, then they think that they may have some problems with sexual dysfunction and impotence. So that's a hot topic as it relates to health as well. So if you haven't already, make sure you share this broadcast out because it's Men's Health Awareness Month, and we are talking about issues as it relates to men's health all week long. And the first topic on deck is prostate. All right, so grab your man, women, come on in the room. We're going to have a conversation about prostates tonight. So women, you do not have a prostate, but I want you here because your men do. So your men, they all have prostates. It's a gland that you're born with. That gland is about the size of a walnut at its full development, and it actually helps in a number of ways. Most importantly, it is responsible for making that fluid that adds to your sperm. So 30 million men, 30 million men suffer from issues as it relates to the prostate. 230 men listen at these numbers, 230 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer every year. So this broadcast is typically interactive. If you know somebody who's had prostate cancer, just put cancer in the comments, because we just said that 230 men will be diagnosed each year. Not a year, but every year. 230,000 men are diagnosed with prostate cancer every year. And so at Sing Life Services, we talk about issues as it relates in particularly to minority health. That's our African American communities and those communities who are disproportionately underrepresented in health. And so we know that prostate cancer is one of those things that affects our communities a little more than other communities. And so we're going to get into that in just a little bit. So that prostate is that walnut-sized gland, and so it does keep growing, all right? So it keeps growing. So it's kind of like the nose and the ears. So if you see people who are old and you say, man, they have some big ears, or wow, they have a big nose, it's because that actually keeps growing as you get larger. So that prostate gland, it starts to grow again as you get around 40. And so that's why it's rare to have somebody in their 20s and 30s and typically mid-40s with actually a prostate cancer, because that gland doesn't start to grow again until about the 40s. Some men aren't bothered, so some people, they don't even realize that their prostate gland is continuing to grow, and some men actually do realize that they are having problems with their prostate gland because they start having symptoms. They go to the bathroom a lot. They get up at night to go to the bathroom, start having some issues with intercourse. So those are their first symptoms. So typically when I see men, as it relates to prostate cancer, prostate inflammation, we're going to talk about that in a minute, they usually are coming in because they have one of two things. One, they're having problems with their sex life, or two, they're getting up at night going to the bathroom. So those are the two reasons that people are dry or men come in, because they know something is wrong. So remember last night we said that men are less likely to go to their primary care provider for a reason other than just an emergency appearance, right? So they're less likely to go in for a routine office visit. They're more likely to hang out until something kind of accumulates, until it festers, until it gets worse, and then they'll prevent to next level, which is the ER or the urgent care. So they should be taking advantage of those opportunities in their primary care. And when those patients do, I see them there, they talk about, they get up at night to go to the bathroom, and they just aren't doing as well in the bed as they normally would. Now, I am a female provider. I am African American, and you know how that conversation can go, right? You know, sometimes people may feel uncomfortable talking to me about issues as it relates to their sex life, about issues as it relates to getting up and going to the bathroom, particularly if you are a man. So that's why the title of our conversation is, do you want your life, or do you want your sex life? Because life in and of itself is super, super important. And sometimes people just have to bend and figure out what really is important to them. So as you all are coming into the broadcast, thank you for tuning in. I am Nikidra, the nurse practitioner that teaches and trains you about ways to get and stay healthy. This week we are talking about men problems. We're starting with the prostate. It's Men's Health Awareness Month, and this week leading up to Father's Day on Sunday, we are talking about issues as it relates to men. And we know that men all have a prostate, and prostate cancer and prostate diseases adversely affect men in the African American community. So I wanted that to be the first thing that we talk about. And if you have a man, if you know men, get them into this broadcast, share it out so that they can make sure to understand all of the nuances as it relates to prostate cancer, as it relates to inflammation of the prostate, what this thing called the prostate actually is. It's only about the size of a walnut, y'all. It's about the size of a walnut, but it can make or break people in many instances. Now, when should you get screened for issues as it relates to your prostate? So there is a new update, and I am actually fresh off of an update conference on that today, actually. A new update that says screening should occur between the ages of 55 and 69. That's a new update. Now, again, I bring you information that affects the minority population, and because we know people in our population, men, they usually get prostate cancer at more severe and it's actually found at a later stage. That screening actually starts earlier in African American men. So you can see that screening starting between about 45 or 50 in African American men. Again, the guidelines kind of sit dormant as it relates to the specific age for our minority population. They lend it up to the provider to base it on the family history, to base it on hereditary components, to base it on other health conditions that the patient may have. Now, once you get to 70, there is no longer a recommendation to screen. So that's important to know, because I know that a lot of us have men who are in the later stages of life, and after 70, there is no indication to continue to screen for prostate cancer, all right? So that's one of the first things that is important to know. Prostate cancer is a thing. It does happen. It happens at a disproportionate rate in minority populations, and it is largely preventable if you actually, or treatable, excuse me, if you get screened early. So remember, we said, our men, you aren't going into your primary care providers for your physicals. You aren't going in for those routine health exams. That's when you would get your screening for prostate cancer. That's when you would get the screening as it relates to if your prostate is inflamed, if there is a problem with the prostate getting large, but it may not be a cancer. So that's where that occurs, is inside of your primary care home, all right? So again, don't forget, we talked about last night, what your man got to do with me. If you didn't see that broadcast from last night, you might want to watch the replay. Because yes, if you got a man, your man has a lot to do with you. Your man has everything to do with you, because you are the driving force for him. You know, we drive men in so many ways. We also should be making sure that they maintain their health, because we know that women outlive men, although there are more men born into the earth, okay? So that's largely in part because our men are not taking as good care of their health as they should be. And thank you, Makisha. Thanks for tuning in. All right, so we're going to talk about the 3 things that could be affecting your prostate. This is super important. Super important. 3 things that could be affecting your prostate. So make sure if you got that man, you get him into the broadcast, you share this information out, because we know a lot of men, and they all have prostates, right? Women, you don't have to worry about the prostate, but you do have to worry about your man, all right? So the first thing is prostatitis, okay? Itis is the inflammation of anything. Appendicitis, that's inflammation of the appendix. Bronchitis, inflammation of the bronchioles. Prostatitis is what? Inflammation of the prostate, okay? So the prostate can get inflamed. And this inflammation of the prostate sometimes makes the prostate get enlarged. It gets irritated. The man sometimes has discomfort. They have problems going to the bathroom. It is an inflammation of the prostate, and most inflammation is either caused by viruses or bacteria, and in this case, it's caused by a bacteria. So that man, that size of that walnut is the size of the prostate. It's got a bacterial infection. So what causes this bacterial infection? It could be a number of things. This time of year, actually, oddly enough, I see a bunch of men who are landscapers. They're riding on vibratory machinery, equipment. They sit for extended periods of time. Truck drivers, all of that. You know where that prostate gland sits, right? It sits in the back, in the butt. You know how we get to it. We all know that, because that's the dreaded exam that nobody wants. So that sitting for extended periods of time, I see it a lot, particularly this time of year. That prostate can get inflamed and it can get infected. Now, this is not a sexually transmitted disease infection. Let me say that. It is not a sexually transmitted disease infection. It is just an infection that occurs around the prostate. So when that happens, there is some irritation, some problem going to the bathroom, and about half of men will have this inflammation in their prostate in their lifetime. So it's fairly common. You can liken it to women having a urinary tract infection. Some people have them more often than not. Of course, like I said, in the case of those men who have certain positions and jobs that require them to sit and do things for an extended period of time, they may get recurrence of prostatitis. But if nothing else, most men, 1 out of 2 men, they will actually have prostatitis in their lifetime. So number 1, Prostatitis, that's actually number 6 on our top 10 at 10, but we're talking about now 3 things that may happen to a man's prostate. And what does that prostate have to do with you women? It has to do with you because he's your man, he is your dad, he's your husband, he's your significant other, he's your brother, he's your son. This is the information that we are getting out to them this week. So if you haven't already, make sure you share this video. I also recognize that lots of people say, oh, I can't watch it because I don't have Facebook. Don't let that be their excuse. If they can Google, and if they're on YouTube, they can Google Zing Life Services on YouTube and be able to download and watch this information as well, because they shouldn't have an excuse that they can't watch and get information that they need because they are not on Facebook. So if they can Google, tell them to go to YouTube, look up Zing Life Services, and they'll be able to find some downloads or download some of the videos from there. So the first is prostatitis. That's the inflammation in the prostate. The next is something called BPH. If you're watching, let me know who's still here in the comments. Somebody put BPH. Just the letter B as in boy, P as in Peter, H as in hello, BPH in the comments, because that is the next thing that we're going to talk about as it relates to men health. So men can get BPH, which is benign prostatic hypertrophy, okay? Super long, that's why we say BPH. So BPH is benign prostatic hypertrophy. So remember that gland that we said is about the size of a walnut, and at about 40 it starts to grow and grow and grow, and in some men it's asymptomatic, but in some men they start having problems. It is a benign means it's not a cancer, but it is an enlargement of their prostate. So this prostate gland starts to grow just for no other reason because they're getting older. There is some link with hormone involvement. Thank you, Makisha. BPH. So enlargement of this prostate actually involves some hormones, so it's thought. Remember that men hormones is testosterone, right? Women, you have that estrogen and progesterone, and you know what the estrogen and progesterone do to you, right? So men have BPH largely caused in part by hormones, most likely testosterone and other hormones in their system, and it means that that prostate gland is just growing slowly for no other reason than the fact that it just wants to grow. And that can cause some symptoms in men. They get up several times to use the bathroom, they have inadequate stream, or they say they have to feel like they have to go, then go right back again, then go right back again, but they don't feel like they're fully emptying. They may have some issues with intercourse as it relates to ejaculation. That is because that prostate gland does sit up into the urethra where those seminal fluids also come out as well. So it is very real, hence the title of this broadcast. Do you want a healthy life, or do you want a healthy sex life? Sometimes that's that trade-off as you get older, because that prostate gland, if it is diseased, if it is inflamed due to infection, those things can be treated. That prostatitis, you take antibiotics for, and typically it's good. Remember, we said 1 in 2 men are going to have that. About half of men are going to have it in their lifetime. That benign prostatic hypertrophy, you're going to be able to take some medicines. There are some medicines around that help with that inflamed prostate. So it does not necessarily negate the inflammation. It helps to keep it from getting worse, is how I explain to my patients. So there are no cure options, but there are treatment options as it relates to that BPH. So again, your man just has to figure out if that is symptom enough for him. Again, I see them usually when they've taken or when they've had about enough. They say enough is enough. I've got to go and figure out what's going on, because when you interrupt a man's food or a sex life, then you know they are definitely coming in to figure out what's going on. All right, next is the notorious, the thing everybody's mind already automatically shifts to when we talk about the prostate, and that is cancer. Prostate cancer. So prostate cancer is that third thing that we're talking about as it relates to the broadcast. So prostate cancer is a cancer growth on the prostate gland. So again, we know cancer can be in a variety of areas in the body. It may be inside of the prostate gland. if it's caught early enough, or it may be exterior to the prostate gland. If it's not identified early, it may actually go into the lungs, into the liver, into the bones, and other places. So this is where we talk about our minority populations, because we are in that group of people who identify the cause or identify the prostate cancer later. Most of the time, it is not captured when it's still inside the prostate, but rather it has spread to other organs and outside the prostate, which means it is more difficult to treat then. Of course, if you catch it when it's inside the prostate, what's likely to happen? They're probably just going to remove the prostate, right? So they're going to remove the prostate. Can you live without a prostate? Somebody tell me in the comments, can you live without a prostate? Yes, it's there. Yes, it served a function, but can you live without it? And men sometimes identify that prostate gland, again, with that almighty sex life, with that almighty ejaculation, and they think automatically ahead that what am I going to do without my prostate? Now, that treatment process of taking out the prostate, of doing some surgeries to the prostate, does not automatically render one with sexual dysfunction. That is a side effect, but it's the side effect that most men hear first, right? So that's the side effect that most of them hear first. So again, we have to ask ourselves, do you want a life, or do you want a life that is unfulfilled as it relates to these issues with your prostate? All right, so it is very important when confined to the prostate gland, then we know that it is successful for early treatment, and that you can get blood tests, you can get some labs, you can get some exams to figure out if your prostate is really cancerous, if there is an elevation in that prostate. There is some tests, digital rectal exam, that notorious test that lots of men actually are aware of. That's going to be the exam when you can get a palpation of your prostate. Now, how do we get to the prostate? Because you all know where it is, right? So how do we get to it? So we have to get to it through your butt, through your rectum. And so it's the thing that nobody wants to think about. It's the thing that nobody wants to even acknowledge. Nobody comes in asking me, can I get a rectal exam today? Can you check my prostate today? Nobody comes in asking me that. But once they realize the importance of having that blood test, and if there's an elevation in the blood test, then having the digital rectal exam, sometimes they come around and face the fact that they may need to have that exam done. Because remember, do you want a saved life, or do you want a ruined or a slightly dysfunctional sex life? Let's think about that. So we're talking about prostate. For those of you who are just tuning in, it is Men's Health Month, and this week we are talking about things as it relates to men's health, because it's leading up to Father's Day on Sunday. So if you have opportunity, check out I Got a Man from last night, and tonight we're talking about prostate cancer. We've talked about, 3 things as it relates to prostate awareness. Prostatitis, which is inflammation of the prostate. Thank you for the super hearts, Erica. We talked about BPH, which is benign prostatic hypertrophy, meaning that prostate is continuing to get larger. And now we're talking about prostate cancer. Why is this important? It is super important because men in our communities are likely to get diagnosed at a later stage, and that is because they do not get the preventative care that they need. And so we know this discussion about men don't go to their providers because they're okay. They don't go into their physical exams. A woman is 50% more likely to go to her physical exam, her yearly exam, than a man is. So those men aren't going in for those physical exams that they should be going in for, where they can get things such as their prostate checked, and they can identify early on if that is something that they should be aware of. We talked about already that screening should start about 55 to 69, but in our African American and minorities population, we want to make sure that screening starts at about 45 to 50. There's some leeway in the guidelines as it relates to that screening, but Yes, that is super, super important because you want to make sure that that prostate, it is the size of a walnut, but it can impact your life greatly. So hence the title, do you want your life or are you more concerned about your sex life? Because let's talk about sex. It is the thing that that prostate gland can impact. There is no denying it. You're not going to get a prostate surgery or treatment option or anything of that matter without there being some discussion about the fact that there may be some alterations in your ejaculation, in your semen production, and things of that nature. There are some things that can be done to assist with that on the backside, but when you tell that to a man initially, he does have a problem kind of focusing in on the real fact of the matter that we've got to do something with this prostate. We've got to do something with this either disease or with this inflamed prostate because it can affect your life, your whole life, and not just one aspect of your life. Now, African American men are twice as likely. They're twice as likely to develop prostate cancer, and they're twice as likely to die from prostate cancer because the diagnosis comes at advanced stages. So that's why this is super important to me because it's helpful that I get the information out to the people in the community who need it most. So if you haven't already, make sure you share out the broadcast because we want to make sure that you women that are watching, you all have men in your life. You have husbands, you have significant others, you have sons, you have men in your life, and they need to be aware about prostate and what the symptoms, what things the prostate can have, the disease processes, and what they need to do about it. Because 1 in 2 people in our African American population will develop prostate cancer, and because of that, we are more likely to die from prostate cancer because it is caught at the advanced stage. Not when it is still in the prostate, when it can be treated and treated effectively, but it's caught when it's spread to other parts of the body. Now, think about this. 1 in 20. Y'all know I love these statistics because it helps to bring them home. 1 in 20 of black men will die from prostate cancer. So just consider if you have family gatherings. Think about if you've been to graduations recently. It's going to be Father's Day on Sunday. If you have a group of men, 20 men, one of those men, 1 in 20 men will die from prostate cancer. 1 in 20 men in our African American community, think about these gatherings that we're in. 1 in 20 of those men will die from prostate cancer. So why is it so prevalent in our community? So I say our because I'm talking about the black community, African Americans. We oftentimes have different genetic precursors that link us to certain disease processes. And so that's why it's important that you are at the front lines of helping to identify different studies and different clinical trials that are helpful in minority populations because there are oftentimes treatment options available, but because the minority populations are not stepping up to the plate and helping to get involved in some of the clinical trials, we aren't aware of how they can affect us. So why do they affect us? One is our environment. So there is some evidence, it's loose-based evidence, but there's some evidence that blacks living in Africa are not as affected with prostate cancer as blacks living in America. So this is some loose data because there also isn't very good testing available in those populations in Africa unless it's a developed country. But that's pretty interesting and it speaks to your environment. So it speaks to what you eat, what you're around, your work influences, different things in your environment. So if we are of the same genetic makeup because we are of African descent, even though we are in America, if that held true, then the same people in Africa would be adversely affected with prostate cancer as well. But there are some studies that show this is not the case. So the first thing is that environment plays a part in the diagnosis or in the incidence of prostate cancer. Next is your family history. So family history plays a role in so many different things. Family history, if you go to your primary care, you know that they'll say, do you have a history of blah, 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 or what's in your family history? That's why they're asking you, because if you have a first degree relative with prostate cancer, then you are 30% more likely to also develop prostate cancer. So if you have a first degree relative, your dad, your brother, then you have a 30% risk of developing prostate cancer as well. If you have multiple first degree, then you want to make sure that you get tested earlier than that age 55. You want to make sure that you get tested around 45 or 50, because that's going to best influence your early detection. Now, for those of you men, you're supposed to be tuned into this broadcast because we are talking about we're talking about men's health this week. And so we know that men are less likely to go and get the screenings and the prevention that they need. We have a download for you. The download is going to get you started. So it's going to make sure that you have what you need to find a new primary care home, to figure out how to go through some of the nuances. What do you need to take? That's at bit.ly/Zing get started. So you women in the room, make sure your men get this download. It's a free download. We want to make sure they have the tools that they need, because if they haven't been to a primary care, so your primary care, let me help you understand this, it's not urgent care and it's not your emergency room. This is where you go, you have an established provider, you go and see that provider. Women have one. So women typically will have a primary care provider. They have a place where they call their medical home. They have a quote-unquote doctor that they see. But we are less likely to see men have this as well. So we need our men in our community to get established with primary care providers. We need them to go in and get these prostate early detection screens so that we can stop being the group of people who are detected later in the disease process, and so that we can increase our risk for survival when we are detected. All right, so bit.ly/Zing get started. So I'm going to put this into the chat, and if you're watching this, make sure you share it out, because this is this is National Men's Health Month. This is the week, though, leading up to Father's Day, and so we are giving you all the information you need for some men health topics, because we know that behind every good man there is a woman, and those women are typically you. So you do what it takes to take care of your family and all that in between. So we want to make sure that in taking care of everything, that you also make sure your man has what he needs. So if you're watching this on replay, make sure you put #replay. And I am going to sign out for tonight, but you know this is the Top 10 at 10. So we come Monday through Friday at 10 p.m. with ways to get you motivated, engaged, and educated about your health. So we will see you tomorrow night. Thank you all for tuning in. If you're just hopping on, make sure you watch the replay, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Have a good one. Bye.